I didn't even know the trust account had a name. But when the banker called, I realized it had already been emptied. The rain tapped a dull rhythm against the windows of my startup office in Boston, a soft percussion that might have been calming on any other day. The call came just as I was finishing the last edits on a pitch deck. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Lena Caldwell. The voice on the other end was warm but brisk. "This is Lydia Grant, Senior Advisor at Newton First Bank. I'm calling about some unusual activity regarding your trust account." I blinked. Trust account. She hesitated, which told me more than her words ever could. "Yes, it's listed under Caldwell Legacy Trust, 2005. There's been, well, the account's nearly depleted." The sound in the room changed quieter somehow, like the world had moved a step back. "There must be a mistake," I said. "There's $350,000 in that trust. It's locked until I'm 30. I haven't touched it." "That's why I'm calling," Lydia said gently. "Would you mind logging in while we're on the line?" I swiveled to my laptop, heart pounding harder than it should have. My fingers fumbled the login. The screen loaded. Account balance. $743.19. My breath caught. This can't be right. Scroll down to withdrawal history. Lydia instructed, her tone now businesslike. "Do you recognize those transactions?" There were dozens, all within the past 2 years. Hotel stays, jewelry, international wire transfers. This isn't mine." My throat went dry. "I'll send over the signature files," Lydia offered. "We're required to hold them. You should review them for discrepancies." I didn't answer. My hand hovered above the keyboard. I was thrown back into a memory so vivid it cut across time like a blade. Vivian Caldwell had been everything to me, sharp-tongued, endlessly perceptive, and the only adult who treated me like an equal. On my 18th birthday, she took me aside away from the party's noise and handed me an envelope. "In here," she said, "is a promise, not from me, from the version of yourself you haven't met yet, the one who'll need this." I opened it to find the paperwork for a trust fund, $350,000 tied to my name and future. She'd set it up to mature when I turned 30, her idea of insurance against everyone else's stupidity. Her words echoed. Now, a locked vault means nothing if the key is in someone else's hands. I exited the banking app and called my father. He picked up on the third ring. "Lena, everything all right? Is there something you want to tell me?" I asked. I kept my voice steady, neutral, even though every part of me was burning. A pause. "I'm not sure what you mean." "About the Caldwell Trust," I said. "It's empty. Gone." There was a pause long enough to age me. "Oh, that. Look, Lena, you're smart. You know money doesn't just sit still. Your mother and I made some choices. Investments. Things you'll understand later." I heard a door closing behind him. He was walking, distancing himself. "It's not like we took it for fun. So you did take it." Another silence. Then his voice low, defensive. "We did what was best for the family." Family! The word made my jaw tighten. I hung up without another word and called my mother. Marissa answered with a sigh that grated like polished glass. "Your father just told me." "Lena, you're overreacting." I said. She sounded tired. "Someday, when you have children, you'll understand what it means to make sacrifices." I laughed. "It wasn't pleasant. I didn't sacrifice it," I said. "You did." She clicked her tongue. "You've always been so dramatic." I ended the call before I could say something I'd regret. My inbox chimed. Lydia's email had arrived. Subject, signature verification files. I clicked the PDF attachment. There were scans of withdrawal forms, each one bearing a signature I apparently made. But they weren't mine. The angles were wrong. The loops too tight. It looked studied, as if someone had practiced being me. I zoomed in. Date June 12th, 2021. That was the week Sienna bought the Louis Vuitton clutch she claimed was a gift from a friend. That same week, I remembered Marissa pushing me to sign a birthday card for our aunt. "Here, quick, use this pen." My stomach turned. I opened the next form. Another signature. Another fake. My hands were trembling now, the kind of tremble that doesn't fade quickly because it doesn't come from fear, but betrayal. I leaned back, stared at the screen and whispered, "That's not my signature." Sienna had a new apartment, a new car, and a $40,000 engagement ring. I had a trust fund that no longer existed. The brunch table glittered with champagne flutes and clinking silverware. It was Mother's Day weekend, and we were gathered at a rooftop restaurant in Back Bay, sleek, overpriced, and flooded with sunlight that felt almost artificial. A family celebration, supposedly, but it felt more like a coronation. Sienna, of course, was the queen. Her hair was curled into effortless waves, her white jumpsuit cinched at the waist with a gold chain belt. She laughed easily, loudly, the kind of laugh that invited attention and dared anyone to look away. Her left hand never strayed far from her face, where a diamond ring the size of a molar sparkled with blinding arrogance. Bryce sat beside her hand on her thigh, wearing a navy blazer that looked freshly pressed. "We're thinking late August," he said, brushing a crumb from her lap. "Small vineyard outside Cape Cod. Very private." Marissa beamed. "We've already spoken to a planner. It's going to be perfect." I watched silent, chewing a piece of overcooked asparagus while resentment bloomed under my tongue. I was supposed to smile toast and pretend I didn't know the truth. "I didn't realize you two bought a place," I said, my voice casual. "Thought you were still in Cambridge." Sienna lifted her mimosa. "We closed last week. A 2-bedroom condo near the Charles. Super chic. We got a little help from Mom and Dad, of course." "Of course," I said. Richard chuckled, dabbing his mouth. "It's an investment. Property always appreciates." I tilted my head. "You mean like a trust fund?" Silence. "Just for a beat?" But I felt it. Marissa jumped in. "Let's not ruin the mood." "Lena, it's a happy day." The way she said ruin made it clear I was already doing just that. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said. "Just making conversation. Then make a better one." She replied with a smile so polished it might have been cut from glass. Sienna didn't even look at me. She was too busy showing Bryce a Pinterest board on her phone, all blush-colored linens and peony centerpieces. Vivian's voice echoed again, uninvited. "There are 2 kinds of daughters." I excused myself and headed to the restroom. The moment I pushed open the door, I heard heels click behind me. Marissa followed in the air between us, electric. "You want to know so badly," she hissed, checking her reflection in the mirror. "Fine. Yes. We used some of your trust." I turned, stunned. "Some most." For her wedding, her lipstick paused mid-application. For her future, for her stability, for the good of the family. I stared. "You could have asked me. You could have said anything." Her tone dropped like ice. "And you would have said no." "Of course I would have said no. It was mine. You don't need it. You're independent. A startup, a brain. You'll be fine. So being responsible is punishment now." She didn't answer. She capped the lipstick and walked past me, murmuring, "You'll thank us one day." I stayed in that sterile room for a long minute, the faucet dripping behind me like a slow countdown. When I returned to the table, the check was already paid, the family rising like it had just concluded a performance. Bryce offered his arm to Sienna, who giggled and accepted. As we descended the stairs, I trailed a few steps behind. Sienna's voice floated back to me, crisp as the wind off the Charles. It's not like she was going to use it anyway. The more I traced the ink, the more it looked like a lie. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of my laptop and the rustle of paper as I laid out every document across my living room floor. The overhead light flickered, catching in the plastic sleeves of old bank statements and scanned withdrawal slips. I had brewed coffee twice and never drank it. My eyes burned, but sleep felt like a luxury for people who hadn't just been robbed by their own family. I held up the first signature, comparing it side by side with the one on my passport. The loops were too tight. The L in Lena was upright like a soldier mine, always leaned slightly left. I reached for another slip, then another, hands moving faster with each one. A memory slammed into me. I was 15 watching Marissa at the kitchen table. She was signing birthday cards for neighbors' friends, church ladies, mimicking their handwriting with eerie precision. It makes people feel special, she had said, smiling. They think it's from someone they care about. Back then, I thought it was a harmless party trick. Now it felt like a loaded gun. I tapped on my keyboard, opening the email from Lydia. Just sent the archived files you asked for. One of the transactions might interest you. Withdrawal dated July 2021, listed as Event Services, Wilcox and Reed. That company ring a bell. I searched the name and immediately found a gallery of floral arrangements, champagne towers, and custom calligraphy. Wilcox and Reed had hosted Sienna's engagement party last summer. I clicked on the receipt attached to the bank transfer. Total $18,750. My breath caught. I hit dial. Lydia answered almost instantly, like she'd been expecting the call. You were right, I said. It wasn't mine. That withdrawal paid for a party I wasn't even invited to. She exhaled softly. I'm sorry, Lena. Can you tell me how this passed compliance, my ID? My signature, none of this matches. Lydia hesitated. That's complicated. We raised concerns when the withdrawals first started. The handwriting was inconsistent. The clerk flagged it. And there was a follow-up. Your mother came in, insisted you were involved. Even brought in paperwork. Said it was a joint family account, that you were focusing on your business, and gave them access. We logged the conversation. I gripped the phone tighter. Did anyone call me? Verify, no, she said quietly. We had no legal obligation at the time. The trust had a co-signer clause. Your grandmother added it when you were still a minor. It defaulted to your parents. A wave of cold fury settled in my chest. So the signature didn't matter. Not legally, no. But ethically, we should have done more. I stared at the screen, the fake signature blinking back at me like a neon accusation. There's more, Lydia said. I reviewed some letters. Your mother wrote the exact same C curl in Caldwell on an old PTA newsletter. Same stroke, same pressure. I closed my eyes. She didn't even try to hide it. You'll want to get legal counsel, she added gently. This isn't just financial. Now it's identity misuse. It's breach of fiduciary duty. I looked around the room. My floor was littered with proof. A trail of paper breadcrumbs leading back to the people who were supposed to protect me. Vivian would have never allowed this, but Vivian was gone. And I had let them convince me to stay quiet. Out of love, out of loyalty. Never again. I picked up my phone and opened my contact list. Naomi Benson, civil litigation attorney. Last I heard, she still owed me a favor from college. I pressed the call button. When the line connected, I didn't say hello. I didn't ask if she had time. I simply said, I'm going to need a lawyer. I always thought Vivian left me the trust because she loved me more. Now I realized it was because she trusted no one else. The cemetery was quiet, save for the wind moving through the trees and the soft crunch of damp gravel beneath my boots. Vivian's grave stood exactly as I remembered, modest, polished with no quote or inscription beyond her name and the years she lived. That was her, no embellishment, just impact. I knelt before the headstone and laid my gloved hand against the cold stone, half expecting her voice to echo in my mind again. It did. If they ever come for what's yours, don't ask why. Ask when. I took the letter from my coat. Her familiar script curved across the page like the lull of a trusted melody. I had read it so many times the creases had become soft as silk. She had warned me. She always warned me. But I was the naive one, believing blood meant loyalty, that family wouldn't turn on me. Vivian had known better. A flashback hit me hard a Christmas years ago. Sienna, always jealous of the smallest attention, had broken the Italian music box Vivian adored. The glass ballerina inside had shattered. Vivian found the damage and turned to both of us. Before I could speak, Sienna said, Lena did it. I remembered the way Vivian's gaze lingered on me. She didn't scold. She didn't console. Later that night, she handed me a velvet pouch with a key inside and whispered, the truth doesn't always defend itself. Keep the proof. At the time, I didn't know she meant it literally. I rose to my feet as Naomi's footsteps approached behind me. Her presence didn't startle me. It never did. We had been friends long before law school had pushed her into a world of paperwork and strategy. She carried 2 cups of coffee and handed me one with a knowing nod. Hazelnut. Always hazelnut. You look like hell, she said gently. I feel like it, I admitted. She didn't ask why I was here. She knew. I had texted her a single line that morning. Vivian was right. That was all it took. I filled her in, how Lydia at the bank had confirmed the signatures, how everything was gone, how my mother deflected, and Sienna flaunted her new life, like it was owed to her. Naomi's expression didn't change, but her grip on the cup tightened. We can go after them, she said after a pause. Legally. But we'll need everything. Proof of identity, theft, breach of fiduciary duty, and how the money was used. She paid for Sienna's condo. And her ring. Probably the wedding too, I muttered. Then we trace the payments. We subpoena records. We file civil charges, maybe criminal. It won't be quick, and it won't be clean. I exhaled slowly, staring at the leaves fluttering at the edge of the path. She left it to me because she knew they'd come for it eventually. Not if when. She trusted you to protect it, Naomi said, even if that meant going against your own blood. Blood. The word sat sour in my mouth. I thought of my mother's cold words at brunch. We did what was best for the family. And Sienna's smug whisper as I walked out, it's not like she was going to use it anyway. I want it back, I said. Every dollar, every signature, every lie exposed. Naomi nodded. Then we'll start building the case. And Lena? Yeah. When this goes public and it will, are you ready for what they'll say? I looked out over the gravestones, remembering the day of Vivian's funeral. Marissa had barely cried. Richard had left before the service ended. Sienna had taken selfies in her black dress before we even left the house. I had been alone in my grief then. I wasn't anymore. I'm done playing the silent daughter, I said. Naomi smiled grimly. Then, let's make some noise. I crouched down again and touched Vivian's headstone, whispering, you were right. My voice didn't shake this time. I meant every word. We stood together for another minute before turning toward the car. Naomi opened the folder she'd brought and handed me the first page. It was a checklist. Documents to collect bank contacts' timelines. Step 1 of 100, but I was ready. I folded Vivian's letter, tucking it deep into my coat like armor. My fingers clenched into a fist around the list Naomi had given me. Let's burn it all down. She wore plain suits and quiet shoes, but her eyes told me she'd seen things no one else dared report. I didn't expect Lydia Grant's home to be so ordinary. Her condo in Cambridge looked like a catalog spread neutral walls, clean surfaces, a lone orchid in a white pot. Nothing out of place, nothing personal, except the 3 locks on the door. She let me in without speaking, locking the door behind us in swift, practiced clicks. Her movements were sharp but not rushed, like someone used to hiding danger under a calm smile. Sit, she said, nodding toward a weathered armchair near the window. We don't have much time. From beneath a side table, Lydia retrieved a locked metal case. She punched in a 6-digit code and the latch popped with a sound that made my stomach tighten. Inside were folders neatly labeled and a flash drive encased in soft felt. She pulled the top folder out and handed it to me. I took it with both hands, unsure if I was ready for what was inside. Start with the emails, she said, sitting across from me. They're what kept me up at night. I flipped open the folder. The printouts were dated, time-stamped, full of back-and-forth exchanges between compliance officers, legal staff, and one name repeated like a chant, Marissa Caldwell. Subject lines read, urgent irregular withdrawal, signature mismatch concerns, override authorization requested. In one email, a young analyst questioned 3 separate wire transfers totaling over $100,000, all labeled as event expenses, tied to Trust 7828, My Trust. Another email from Marissa snapped back like a whip. This is a family matter. Any further delays will result in re-evaluation of our relationship with your institution. I looked up. She threatened the bank. Repeatedly, Lydia confirmed she knew exactly how to pressure the right people. She wasn't just persuasive, she was dangerous. The next file was worse. A waiver one-page typed in generic font, signed in red ink on what looked like my old startup's letterhead. The wording was vague, but chilling. Ilena Caldwell. Authorize the full discretionary management and liquidation of Trust 7728 by Richard and Marissa Caldwell for purposes deemed necessary for family stability. It was dated March 16th, 2021. I was in Tokyo, I said automatically. I flew out March 12th and came back the 24th. I still have the boarding passes. You're not crazy, Lydia said gently. I checked immigration logs. You were out of the country, which means the signature's forged. My chest tightened. I'd suspected, but confirmation it felt like a knife sliding cleanly between my ribs. Lydia pulled another sheet. Here's the cover letter. It came from your father's office. Faxed, directly. I read the familiar header of his law firm. My stomach turned. I don't know how deep this goes, I whispered. I thought it was just selfishness. But this is criminal. It is, Lydia agreed, but no one wanted to challenge her. One time, a junior officer flagged a similar case. Within a week, he was reassigned to another branch, quietly. I took a deep breath and reached for the flash drive. What's on here, everything? Internal memos. Flagged transactions policy overrides. Some of it's encrypted, but I included a decryption file. Keep it offline. Print what you need. Don't trust the cloud. I nodded the drive, burning a hole in my palm. Why now? I asked. Why are you helping me? Lydia's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Because you're not the only daughter who's been stolen from. But you're the first who asked the right questions. Her eyes, those haunted, intelligent eyes, met mine with a kind of fragile hope. Because you asked, she repeated, and because someone has to. I wanted to hug her. Instead, I asked the one question I dreaded. What happens if I take this public? She didn't hesitate. They'll discredit you, call you unstable, maybe even cut you off. But if you keep your documentation airtight, if you play it smart, they won't be able to stop you. I looked down at the documents in my lap. Proof of lies, leverage, betrayal. I had asked for the truth. Now I had to decide what to do with it. Lydia stood and walked to the window, pulling the curtain slightly. You're not the first girl she's done this to, she said quietly. But you might be the first one who fights back. I didn't know where to begin until I realized the paper trail began. The day my grandmother died. Vivian always said the dead had their own way of leaving messages, and that their documents, if preserved, spoke louder than any living voice. I hadn't truly believed her until now. It was early June, and the Boston air had that restless electric stillness, like something just under the surface was waiting to erupt. Naomi's office didn't match my expectation of a legal war room. It was sleek, minimalist, with soft wooden accents and a framed quote behind her desk. The law is reason free from passion. I didn't buy it. Naomi was calm, but I could see fire behind her restraint. She gestured for me to sit. Lydia sent the files last night. Claire's decrypting some timestamps, but the structure's solid. We've got a blueprint. Now we build the case. My laptop blinked open with a directory of neatly organized PDFs, metadata logs, and a folder ominously titled Flagged Withdrawals. Naomi began explaining the legal angles: fiduciary duty, misuse of trust, digital impersonation, bank negligence. It all sounded clinical, but to me, it was the language of betrayal. I opened one folder. There it was, again my forged signature. But now, it wasn't just about handwriting. There were authorization forms with IP addresses, login attempts that pinged from my parents' home Wi-Fi in Newton, and one transaction labeled Event Coordination, Charles River Plaza. I remembered that plaza. It was where Sienna hosted her bridal showcase. White tents, champagne fountains, the works. Naomi leaned in. Everything big happened within 60 days of your grandmother's passing. That's our anchor point. I scrolled down. The oldest document in the batch was dated March 9th, 2021. Vivian's funeral was March 6th. She died on a Saturday, I murmured, and by Tuesday, they'd already started taking what wasn't theirs. Naomi didn't blink. We'll need to subpoena internal bank communications and get surveillance access to verify who logged in during those days. If they faked your signature, it means they bypassed two-step authentication. That's deliberate. I nodded, heart pounding. This wasn't just family betrayal. It was organized, intentional fraud. Claire entered with a USB drive and placed it beside Naomi. There's something you need to see. Naomi plugged it in. The screen filled with call logs, transaction summaries, and an email. It was from a Gmail address, lenac.official21@gmail.com. The subject line read, Consent for Disbursement, dated March 10th, 2021. My stomach twisted. That's not my email, I said. Naomi opened the message. The body was a short paragraph, allegedly from me stating that I fully authorized Richard and Marissa Caldwell to manage and disperse trust assets on my behalf. It was signed, Lena C., casually, no legal phrasing, no digital signature. Then Naomi clicked the details drop-down. The email had been sent from a location tagged in New Jersey. I was in Arizona that week, I said quietly, on a work retreat. Naomi turned to me. They created a fake account. This isn't just theft. It's impersonation with intent to defraud. The weight of it sank in. My parents hadn't just stolen from me. They'd fabricated my digital self to erase my rights. Lydia called as we were reviewing metadata. Her voice crackled through the speaker. I've cross-checked the IP addresses. 3 major withdrawals match devices linked to your mother's work laptop. Naomi jotted notes rapidly. That confirms it. 1 more forged document and we're ready. I opened another file at random. It was a chat transcript between my mother and a bank manager discussing expedited access and a family discretion waiver. The tone was warm, familiar, like collaborators, not client and banker. And then I found it. A scanned draft, never finalized, titled Custodial Override Addendum. It referenced me as mentally distracted and consistently unstable, suggesting the family had stepped in for my own good. My hands trembled as I read it. It was written in my mother's voice, but it might as well have been signed with poison. Naomi touched my shoulder. This is more than enough to get discovery approved. Her words sounded distant. I stared at the computer screen, and for a moment I saw myself not as a daughter, not even as a victim, but as a case number in someone else's ledger. Then Naomi said what pulled me back into the room. If we catch 1 more false document, we can file the suit. Officially. It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. Just a letter. But I knew it'd be the first crack in their polished glass. The Caldwell residence was the kind of home that masked its sins in elegance. Perched on a quiet street in Newton, it stood like a relic of upper-class stability. Tall columns, white shutters, an oversized wreath of peonies pinned perfectly on the front door. I walked up the stone path in a tailored navy dress envelope tucked neatly in my handbag and a practiced calm in my posture. It was Sienna's bridal shower, but I wasn't here to celebrate. The garden buzzed with well-dressed women sipping cucumber water and rosé. A jazz trio played under a white tent. Sienna glided between guests like a pageant queen, thanking everyone with artificial warmth. I stood at the entrance for a beat too long before stepping in. Marissa saw me. First, of course, she did, and offered a smile, just brittle enough to crack. "Lena, how lovely you came," she said, air-kissing my cheek. Her voice held no warmth, just performance. "I wouldn't miss it," I said flatly. She guided me toward a table where Richard was holding court with Bryce and some extended family friends. His laugh was too loud, his gestures exaggerated, as if to show the world that everything was perfect. I watched him for a moment. The man who once lifted me onto his shoulders at the 4th of July parade now flinched at my gaze. I sat folding my napkin slowly, letting the silence announce me. Sienna clinked her glass for attention and launched into a speech about gratitude and family. It was all rehearsed, 1 part devotion, 2 parts self-promotion. When she was done, I stood. "I have something for you, Dad," I said, reaching into my bag. I handed him the envelope with 2 fingers. He looked at it, then at me. "What is this, a letter from my attorney?" I said. "You'll want to read it." Bryce's brow furrowed. Sienna's smile vanished. Marissa straightened her spine like a piano wire. "This is a bridal shower. Marissa said through clenched teeth. Can't we keep things civilized? I am being civilized, I replied. That letter outlines the facts. The money taken, the signatures forged, the law you've bent until it broke. Sienna leaned forward, her voice tight. Lena, what are you doing? I turned to her. You're wearing my future on your finger, living in my condo, planning a wedding funded by money I was never supposed to know was gone. Don't be dramatic, Richard snapped. You're tearing this family apart over money that wasn't even yours to begin with. I could hear a collective inhale from the guests nearby. Eyes darted from flower arrangements to faces unsure whether to keep sipping or flee. It was mine, I said, staring directly at him. You just never thought I'd fight for it. The silence that followed rang louder than any argument. Marissa tried again. We did what was best for both of you. Sienna had real needs, real timelines. We didn't think you'd notice that you forged my name, faked my consent while I was overseas, I shot back. That you gambled on my silence. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The mask was slipping. I turned to leave. But before I did, I leaned closer to the table. This is just the beginning, I whispered. Next time, it'll come with a court date. As I walked away, I heard Sienna mutter, You've ruined everything. No, I thought. I'm just getting started. Later that night, Naomi and I sat on her balcony overlooking the Charles River. The wind carried the scent of damp lilacs and distant rain. They didn't take it well, I said, sipping a glass of red wine. They weren't supposed to, she replied. The point was never to soothe. It was to scare. I thought of Richard's clenched jaw, Marissa's stiff hands, Sienna's broken expression. Yes, they were scared. And scared people make mistakes. You're not alone in this, Lena Naomi said quietly. Remember that. For the first time since the call from the bank, I believed her. It was mine. You just never thought I'd fight for it. Naomi didn't just build legal cases. She built traps and waited. That morning, her office buzzed with a quiet, focused intensity. No one raised their voice. Phones were set to silent. The walls were bare except for a mounted legal license and a single clock ticking steadily over the door. Naomi's desk was arranged with the precision of someone who weaponized facts. She didn't waste time on emotions. She arranged them like ammunition. She handed me a thick folder labeled Draft. File copy? This, she said, is your opening salvo. Inside were the foundations of a civil complaint, detailed charges of misappropriation, breach of fiduciary duty, financial forgery, and institutional complicity. My name was printed across the top of every page just above the defendants, Marissa Caldwell, Richard Caldwell, and First Shore Bank. The bank too, I asked, trying to keep my voice from cracking. They didn't just miss red flags, Naomi replied. They folded them neatly and tucked them away. She tapped on her laptop. Subpoena drafts opened on screen, dozens of them. We'll serve the bank, their compliance officer, Marissa's financial planner, even Bryce's firm if we need to. Anyone who touched your trust without cause will be named. Lydia's flash drive was plugged in. I recognized the folders, flag transfers, impersonation threads. Audio logs. One file caught my eye. Withdrawals, June 2021. I clicked. A list of high-dollar transactions appeared, each executed within 60 days of Vivian's death. It was a cash grab, I whispered. They knew no one else was watching. That's where they're wrong, Naomi said. Vivian may be dead, but her documents are very much alive. We filed the complaint at Suffolk County Civil Court that afternoon. It was almost anticlimactic. No gavel, no press, no shouting. Just a clerk stamping a date in red and sliding the papers into a drawer. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but I could feel the barometric pressure shifting. Naomi took a call from Claire, her assistant, confirming all subpoenas were dispatched. One name stood out: Mitchell Fry. He was your parents' accountant, Naomi told me, fired 6 months after Vivian passed. No announcement, NDA in place. What did he know enough to raise concerns? Enough to be removed. We planned to find him. The next move was preparation for discovery. Naomi scheduled a session to map all possible evidence routes, email servers, financial logs, property deeds. I asked if they could dodge the subpoenas. They'll try, she said. Delay is their first defense. But we're not chasing them. We're leading. I watched her work like a strategist, laying mines, not traps. She flagged inconsistencies in dates, filed orders for digital metadata, and began drafting a motion to compel early disclosure. Every corner Marissa had once used for shade was now lit by legal fire. Still, something nagged at me. Why had Lydia waited until now? Why risk giving me the flash drive? When I asked, Naomi answered plainly, because sometimes whistleblowers need to know they're not alone before they act. I exhaled, leaning back. And what now? Now we wait, she said. And while we wait, we prepare everything for war. My phone buzzed. It was Lydia. The message was short, just one line. Lydia texts Lena, "There's a second trust, and they don't think you know about it." When I looked into my sister's eyes for the first time, I saw guilt, not defiance. It was late afternoon when I ducked into the cafe on Beacon Street. I hadn't planned on being there. I was only looking for somewhere quiet to read through case notes. But fate, or something like it, had a sharper sense of irony. There across the room by the window sat Sienna, alone. No diamond-encrusted phone in hand, no Bryce, no Mom. Just her and a half-empty cup of something pale untouched. Her face was thinner. Or maybe it was just the expression tight-tired. Like she hadn't slept well in weeks. She looked up as the doorbell jingled and her eyes landed on me. Panic flickered there, quickly masked by something else, resignation maybe. I froze. She raised a brow, then to my surprise, nodded toward the chair across from her. "Guess we're doing this?" she said quietly as I approached. "I guess so," I replied and sat without ceremony. The silence between us was thick, layered with years of unspoken tension and rivalry, and now something heavier. Legal filings, accusations, stolen futures. She stirred her drink. "Do you think I knew I blinked?" "What?" She looked up again, clearer now. "Do you think I knew what Mom and Dad did?" I hesitated. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to hurl every document and data log in my bag at her, let the evidence speak for itself. But I didn't. Not yet. "I don't know what you knew," I said carefully, "but I know what I didn't. And I didn't know my trust was gone until it was too late." She winced. "Mom said you weren't using it, that you told her you didn't want to rely on family money. She said that to you?" She nodded, biting the inside of her cheek. "She made it sound like you were doing the noble thing, turning it down. She said it would just sit there wasted." I laughed bitter. Wasted. That money was mine. "Grandma Vivian gave it to me for a reason. She told me she'd clear it with you later," Sienna said. I assumed you agreed. I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive I'd been carrying around like a talisman. I laid it between us. "That has the waiver with my forged signature, voice recordings from Grandma, internal emails between Mom and the bank." Sienna stared at it like it might explode. "She forged my name," I said, "on documents that gave her access to everything. She funneled money for your condo, your engagement party. God knows what else." "I didn't ask her," Sienna whispered. "I know," I said, and meant it. She looked away, her voice cracking. "You think I'm just like her." "I don't know who you are right now," I said. "But I'm hoping you're better." Sienna exhaled shakily. "A few months ago, I walked into her office while she was working on something. She slammed the laptop shut when she saw me. I only caught a glimpse, but it had your name on it. A PDF, with a government seal. Can you describe it?" She nodded. "I think it had your old address." She was logged into some fake Gmail account. The pieces clicked too easily. "I'm filing next week," I said. "Officially. Naomi's building the case. We have enough for identity theft, fiduciary abuse, and bank complicity. But if you testified," Sienna stiffened. "Testify you were in the house. You saw things. You're the only one who might be able to link what I know to what she did behind closed doors." "I don't know what good it would do," she said. "It won't bring back the money." "No," I agreed, "but it might stop her from doing it again. And it might save you from being dragged down with her." She blinked, a tear slipping free before she could catch it. I didn't know, Lena. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said softly. Now decide what you want to do with that. She didn't answer right away. She stared out the window, jaw trembling. If I testify, she said finally, would it fix anything? I leaned forward, voice steady, despite the weight in my chest. No, but it might save you. I never expected to find a second vault. I just expected more silence. The Cambridge Bank archives didn't resemble the vaults I imagined as a child. No golden lighting or velvet ropes. Just concrete floors, steel-lined storage, and a humidity level so precise it made the air feel brittle. Lydia was already inside, hunched over a terminal. The screens reflected in her glasses made her eyes look like they were glowing. "You came fast," she said without looking up. "You said you found something encrypted." I replied, my pulse starting to tick. "Something my grandmother left?" Lydia nodded and turned the screen toward me. This wasn't part of the original asset list, but it surfaced when I ran a deeper metadata pull. Bank archives often retain ghost tags, even if something was never finalized. There it was. Archive ID, Viv Alt Trust 2. Secondary trust, I whispered. She clicked through layers of encrypted fields. My name appeared again, L. Caldwell, linked as the sole recipient. "I didn't find this earlier," Lydia explained. "It was hidden beneath the folder structure for a dormant account. One only Vivian herself ever accessed." Naomi leaned in. "We'll need provenance, authenticity, digital trail. But if this is real, it's very real," Lydia said. "Because of this." She pulled up a scanned PDF labeled Final Letter, VEC. It was handwritten. Vivian's handwriting, elegant and angular, unmistakable. My chest tightened before I even read a word. "To whom it may concern," it began. "In the event that primary structures of Trust Number 1 are compromised either through mismanagement, coercion, or fraud, I designate Lena Caldwell as sole beneficiary of the secondary asset vault. This document supersedes any informal discussions and is to be executed only in response to breach." The date was April 10th, 2021, one day before she died. I reached out and touched the screen. The black ink felt like a whisper frozen in time. Naomi's voice was low. "This is more than evidence. It's intent." A wave of something unspeakable passed over me. Grief and anger and vindication folded into one. "I don't understand," I said finally. "Why didn't she register this with the court?" Lydia's face softened. Maybe she didn't have time. Maybe she thought hiding it was safer. Either way, it's traceable, time-stamped, and digitally indexed under her access profile. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A new email. Subject second ledger, from Mitchell Fry. "I'm ready to talk," the message read. "They fired me after I flagged irregular withdrawals tied to both trusts. I kept my backup drive." "Tell me when." Naomi let out a sharp breath. "We find him. We verify the files. Between this document and Mitchell's testimony, we can burn their defense to ash." I opened Vivian's old leather journal, flipping through the pages I'd read 100 times. One line had always puzzled me until now. I built 2 keys, one for trust, one for truth. She never said what the second vault contained, only that it was never meant to protect money, but to protect legacy. "Me?" Naomi placed her hand gently over mine. "This is your moment, Lena." I nodded slowly. "Add this to our next court filing. Subpoena whatever we need from the bank. And get Mitchell under legal protection." Lydia turned to me. "You sure about this? If we move now, the gloves are off. There's no more hiding. What they did not from the court, not from the press, not from anyone." I stared at the screen again. Vivian's signature gleamed beneath the scan watermark like it had waited all this time just to be seen. All these years, she'd been trying to protect me even after death. She'd known how things would unravel. "This isn't revenge," I said. "This is restoration." Naomi reached for her briefcase. "Then let's begin. You're holding the final piece." I stood, my voice steady, my resolve crystalline. "This ends now." The courtroom wasn't packed, but I only needed 2 people to hear the truth, and they were both seated across from me. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly as I sat behind the plaintiff's table, my hands clenched around the legal pad Naomi handed me an hour ago. Across the aisle sat Marissa and Richard, both in tailored gray. Their matching suits were no coincidence. It was always about presentation with them. Always about illusion. I could hear Naomi's voice in my head. You don't need to win the crowd. Just the judge. And yourself. Judge Hathaway entered promptly at 9:00 a.m., her robe billowing slightly as she took the bench. Her expression was unreadable. I forced myself to look up to hold my spine straight. This wasn't just about money. It was about memory justice and the final wishes of someone who trusted me when no one else did. Opening statements, Hathaway said. Naomi stood composed and sharp. Your Honor, today, we present evidence of a systematic breach of fiduciary duty, including forgery, coercion, and the misappropriation of funds meant solely for my client, Lena Caldwell. The defendants. Lena's own parents acted with intent to conceal, manipulate, and ultimately dissolve the trust established by the deceased Vivian Caldwell. She paused, then glanced at me. We will show that this was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated betrayal. Opposing counsel rose his voice smooth. Your Honor, the defendants maintain they acted in good faith. No theft occurred. Any financial overlap was rooted in family necessity and miscommunication. I stared straight ahead. Family necessity. That's what they called it. Naomi called her first witness Mitchell Fry. He walked in nervously clutching a folder. His hair was thinner than I remembered from the old photos Lydia had dug up, and the way he adjusted his collar reminded me of someone walking into a storm without an umbrella. Mr. Fry, Naomi began. Can you state your position at Caldwell Financial and explain why your employment ended? I was a compliance analyst. I was terminated shortly after flagging inconsistencies between two sets of trust paperwork linked to Vivian Caldwell's estate. Did you notify your superiors? Yes. I emailed concerns to the board and was asked to cease review. A week later, I was let go. She handed him a document. Do you recognize this? Yes? It's the forged waiver claiming Lena Caldwell consented to fund transfer. The metadata shows it was uploaded from Marissa Caldwell's office. There it was finally spoken aloud in public record. I didn't breathe. Opposing counsel tried to shake him. Mr. Fry, were you disgruntled after being fired? Mitchell smirked. You bet I was. But I didn't lie under oath. Naomi returned to the table and whispered, We're landing every punch. I nodded, unsure whether I was about to laugh or cry. When it was my turn, I stood slowly and walked to the small lectern. My grandmother gave me more than money, I said. She gave me trust, not just the legal kind, but the belief that I could protect what mattered when she was gone. When I found out the account was empty, I thought it was a mistake. I wanted to believe no one close to me could do that. But every document, every signature, every ignored warning proved otherwise. I looked at Judge Hathaway. This isn't about inheritance. It's about honoring someone who tried to do the right thing, even after death. The judge was silent for a beat. Then she looked down at the paperwork. The court finds the evidence presented today deeply troubling. I will allow all documents and testimony into the full trial record. This matter is set for continued hearing and final ruling 2 weeks from today. The gavel fell once. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Naomi gripped my shoulder. Across the courtroom, Marissa still sat perfectly still, expression unreadable. But Richard slumped slightly in his chair as though the air had been let out of him. And Sienna? She didn't look at them. She looked only at me. As I gathered my things, she approached slowly and slipped something into my palm, a small folded note. I opened it beneath the table. I'm ready to testify for you. My sister's voice cracked when she said it. That's how I knew she wasn't faking it. The courtroom was heavier than before. Fuller, warmer, louder. Word had spread from last week's hearing, and now curious eyes filled the back row. My parents' legal team wore tighter collars. Naomi, however, stood the same as she always did, unshaken. Sienna sat on the witness stand, her hands folded too tightly in her lap. She had never looked more unadorned. No makeup, no designer jacket, no diamond ring. Just Sienna. And when she cleared her throat, the courtroom stilled. I didn't know the details. Not at first, she began, but I remember Mom was on the phone with someone from the bank. She said Lena wouldn't notice, not for years, and that it was the only way to make things right. Naomi stepped forward. Did you confront her? Sienna nodded barely. I asked what she meant. She told me to stay out of it, that it wasn't my money to worry about. But I saw the file on her laptop. It was named LC Alt Trust DF. There were dates, emails. The signature looked like Lena's, but it wasn't. Opposing counsel stood abruptly. Objection, speculative witness testimony. Overruled Judge Hathaway cut in. Continue. Naomi handed Sienna a printout. Can you identify this? That's the email I saw, sent from Lena Caldwell, @gmail.com. But Lena was in Europe that week. She never used that email. I clenched the armrest of my chair as the page passed to the judge. That fake account had haunted my inbox for months. Ghost emails I'd never sent, auto-forwarded notices I didn't recall setting. Now it was on the record. Naomi moved with sharp confidence. Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to enter Exhibit 14, a handwritten letter from the late Vivian Caldwell, dated one day before her passing. Alongside it, I present metadata logs provided by Lydia Grant from the bank's secure archive, confirming the document was never accessed, edited, or altered posthumously. Judge Hathaway adjusted her glasses. Accepted. There was a pause. A charged, trembling kind of pause. Then Naomi read aloud, To my granddaughter, Lena, I have created this second trust, not because I doubt your strength, but because I know the world will try to break you. Let this serve not as money, but as proof. You are my legacy, not them. You could hear breath catch. Not just mine. Marissa leaned toward her lawyer, whispering furiously, but the judge raised a hand. The court will recess for 10 minutes. I will review all exhibits. Be prepared for a ruling. I met Sienna's eyes as she stepped down. She looked undone, but clearer, cleaner, like someone who had finally dropped the weight of years. When court resumed, the silence was deafening. Judge Hathaway's voice cut through. This court finds sufficient and corroborated evidence of fiduciary breach, document forgery, and systemic misappropriation of protected funds. Effective immediately, the original trust fund shall revert in full to Lena Caldwell. The secondary trust, though unregistered, is deemed valid under expressed intent of the grantor and supporting forensic verification. Legal sanctions and penalties will be issued against Richard and Marissa Caldwell pending further criminal review. No sound came from the defense table. It was over, not in a blaze, not with shouting or slamming doors. Just the truth spoken at the right time, finally unarmed and sharp enough to cut through everything they built. Court adjourned. As the benches emptied, I moved to collect my bag. Naomi was already shaking hands with reporters, but I stayed back, breath catching behind my ribs. One step at a time. Richard brushed past me at the aisle. He didn't stop, but I heard him mutter it, low, venomous, meant to be a blade. You were never part of this family anyway, and for the first time I didn't flinch. I didn't believe him. The court verdict didn't end it. It only loosened the strings and the entire web began to fall. The next morning, headlines dominated every Boston media outlet. Daughter wins, landmark trust fraud case against prominent Caldwell family glared from the Globe's digital front page. My inbox was flooded journalists, old college friends, legal bloggers. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sat in Naomi's office, the blinds drawn a warm mug untouched in my hands as she drafted the official statement on my behalf. We decided to release only 2 lines. We respect the court's decision and believe transparency always serves the greater good. But the damage had already been done. Richard's financial advisory firm began bleeding clients within hours of the ruling. A whistleblower report from 2 years ago, previously buried, resurfaced, and was picked up by the Financial Times. It detailed internal mismanagement, hush payments to employees, and unethical partnership deals. Major investors backed out in waves. His firm's stock, once a quiet darling of Boston's private portfolios, plummeted by 28% in 4 days. Marissa, on the other hand, tried to maintain grace. She released a carefully worded statement. This matter has been deeply personal. I have no regrets about protecting my family. But then came the footage. Someone leaked security video from a local gala 6 months ago. Marissa, red wine in hand, berated a teenage volunteer for wrinkling her gown. The media had a field day. That clip alone received over 1.5 million views in 48 hours under the tag Meltdown Matriarch. Then came the nonprofit boards. She was quietly removed from the Boston Heritage Foundation, the Museum Council, and the Women in Legacy Circle, 3 institutions she had chaired. Her social calendar collapsed in a blink. Through it all, I stayed silent. Naomi protected my space, fiercely managing communication with legal teams, reporters, and even well-meaning friends. We scheduled no interviews. We rejected every podcast and documentary request. The only press interaction was through pre-approved legal statements. Sienna didn't reach out until she did. It was a Wednesday evening. Rain tapped the windows soft and steady. I heard the elevator outside my apartment hum to a stop. Then came the knock. She stood there, hair damp, makeup smudged, holding 2 duffel bags. I moved out, she said simply. I couldn't. Not after what they did. I thought I could live with it, but I can't. I stepped aside. No questions. Later that night, she curled on my couch, eyes-swollen voice hoarse. I thought I'd be angry at you for breaking it all open. But I'm not. I think I'm finally breathing again. I nodded. Neither of us said much after that. On Friday, a camera crew cornered Marissa outside a Whole Foods in Chestnut Hill. She tried to walk away, but turned back shaky-cornered and snapped, "You don't understand what it's like raising daughters who think betrayal is justice," she cried, right there in the parking lot. The clip aired that evening on every local station. I watched it alone, volume low. It didn't bring satisfaction, only a sense of exhale. The machine had stopped spinning. This wasn't revenge, I whispered to myself. It was correction. Then just as I was turning off my phone, one last notification popped up. Subject: TEDx Cambridge. Speaker invitation. We'd be honored to have you speak about legacy power and reclamation. I stared at the message, letting the words sink in. Maybe what Vivian built wasn't just a trust account. Maybe it was a map. And maybe I had just taken the first step beyond its edges. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to speak. The TEDx red circle on the stage looked smaller than I imagined. From the rehearsal room, I could hear the low hum of the audience gathering clinks of glasses, soft chatter programs unfolding. My name was printed beneath the theme, Reclaiming What Was Never Lost. I had rewritten the talk 5 times. The first draft was a firestorm numbers, legal jargon, accusations. Naomi had read it quietly, then looked up and said, "This sounds like a court closing, not a story." She wasn't wrong. The second draft was all emotion, broken memories, trembling anger, and the bitterness I hadn't realized I still carried. It too didn't fit. I wanted to be truthful, but not wounded. Empowered, but not vengeful. In the third draft, I wrote about Vivian, how she had taught me to use silence as a tool, how she left behind not just money, but maps of trust, of suspicion of who people really were. I remembered her birthday cards that always included one sentence in Latin, her journals, the final voice message. If they ever come for what's yours, don't ask why. Ask when. It made the final cut. Naomi had helped shape the narrative. We structured it as a journey. I would open with the moment I discovered the missing trust, walk through the legal maze, then return to the human cost. How betrayal from those closest to you isn't just about money. It's about identity. Tell the story like you're speaking to one person who needs to hear it, Naomi had said backstage. That person was there. As the host called my name, I stepped onto the stage in a navy blue dress, nothing flashy but sharp clean. The lights were warm, the hall quiet, expectant. I took a breath and began. I never thought I'd be standing here, not because I couldn't imagine success, but because I was never taught to believe justice belonged to people like me. The kind of justice that comes quietly After years of silence, I walked them through it, my grandmother's voice messages, the forged signature, the confrontation with my parents, the trial, the email with my name faked. I didn't name names, but I didn't hide truths either. I spoke about how silence feels like safety until you realize it's a cage. I talked about the loneliness of fighting people who say they love you, the kind of grief that comes not from death, but from disillusionment. And then I ended with this. Sometimes survival doesn't look like revenge or victory. Sometimes it looks like walking out of court alone, knowing you spoke the truth. And that was enough. The applause came slowly, then surged. A standing ovation. I didn't cry. I only closed my eyes, breathed in deeply, and nodded. Backstage, I sipped water with trembling hands. Naomi squeezed my shoulder. "You did it." Later, as the crowd mingled, a girl no older than 20 approached me. She wore a faded blazer and held her phone tight like a shield. "Your story," she said. "It's mine too. Not the money, but the part where no one believed me. I just wanted to say, thank you." I didn't ask for her details, but the next morning I found her name. She had submitted a scholarship application through a small fund I had recently endowed in Vivian's name. She was the first applicant. And as I read her essay, something clicked. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the beginning of someone else's. I used to think trust was about money. Now I know it's about who you give your silence to. The sun filtered through the tall windows of Wellesley College's auditorium, casting soft, golden rays across the stage. A single podium stood beneath a banner, Vivian Caldwell Scholarship Fund. First annual ceremony. The name still made my chest tighten, but not from grief anymore, something closer to reverence. I stood backstage, mic in hand, waiting for the cue. The voiceover video was playing a soft piano melody underneath Vivian's old voice recording. I'd found it tucked inside one of her cassette diaries, the tape labeled in her careful cursive, "In case of battle." "Justice may come late," she said in that dry, wise tone of hers, "but it always signs in your name." The crowd hushed as the video faded. Then I stepped forward. "I'm not here as a lawyer," I began, "or a victim, or even a success story. I'm here as someone who almost gave up until I realized the silence they counted on was the very thing I needed to break." I introduced the scholarship and named the first 3 recipients. The first, a young woman from a rural town in Maine who worked nights at a diner to support her siblings. The second, a foster youth who had moved through 7 homes by age 15. The third, a queer student from Alabama who taught herself code between shifts at a grocery store. They sat in the front row, their eyes wide, their hands clasped tightly in their laps. I saw myself in each of them, not in experience, but in the way they sat at the edge of belonging. Somewhere near the back, Naomi stood with her arms folded, smiling. And in a far corner, I spotted Sienna. She wasn't seated. She stood near the doorway, half in shadow, her phone in her hand. Our eyes met briefly. Then just before she turned to leave, I saw my phone buzz with her message. "You were always the strong one." That night, I uploaded the TEDx talk to my professional site. I didn't expect much, just closure. But within 2 days, it had over 2 million views. Comments poured in, stories of stolen inheritances, financial gaslighting families who weaponized trust. I didn't reply to all of them. I couldn't, but I read each one. On the 3rd morning, I opened a new document. My new will. Naomi helped notarize it. I named no family, no Caldwell, no obligation, just the fund, just the future. I left my intellectual property rights to a nonprofit I was launching with Naomi, focused on helping women fight financial fraud within families. My apartment, my savings, my grandmother's collection of coded journals, all designated to stay in service of the voice I had almost lost. At home that evening, I sat at my desk. Vivian's old locket lay open beside me, its tiny photo of her younger self, now accompanied by a tiny voice chip. I pressed the record button and whispered into it. "For the next girl they underestimate, don't stay quiet." Then I closed it, let it click shut, and set it on the desk like a seal on a letter I'd been writing my whole life. And this time, No one else would hold the key. They tried to silence me with signatures and red tape, with guilt and loyalty dressed up as love. But here I am, still speaking. If you've ever been told to let it go just to keep the peace, I want you to hear this. You are not selfish for wanting justice. Your voice matters. Leave a comment not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been betrayed by the people they trusted most. And if you're standing at the edge of silence, wondering whether to step back or step forward, take the step. Even if it's shaky, that's how survival begins.